Hi, welcome to Season 1, Episode 4 of Everyday NLP Bites. Welcome back if you've been watching the earlier episodes, and a warm welcome to anybody who is watching them for the first time or listening to them on podcast. My name is Florence Madden. I am an NLP trainer and coach based in Cumbria in the north of England. I'm also the author of The Intention Impact Conundrum, which is based on a course that I run in the Lake District, and Everyday NLP, a book that I co-wrote with my friend and associate Eleni Sarantanu of Life Spheres. So the bite that I want to look at this time is answering this question: where do we need to flex? I mentioned in the earlier episode, I think episode 1, I talked about this idea that the original creators or developers of NLP were working on models. They were looking at people that were successful in what they do, and they modeled that behavior. And I liken that to a recipe. So they didn't just look at how somebody did something, they also looked at the attitude that that person took, because both of those things are necessary in order to achieve the success. Let me just give you an easy example of that. If you think about looking at somebody who's a good trainer, you might look at how they put their training together and how they deliver it. But how successful that training is likely to be will also depend on their attitude. It could be their attitude towards themselves, and even more so, the attitude towards their trainee. So these attitudes of successful people, these resourceful attitudes, are known as presuppositions of NLP. In other words, what you presuppose before you go into a situation. And the one that I want to focus on today is the person with the most flexibility has the greatest influence. Now, it's kind of ironic that I'm recording these during the coronavirus crisis, where the demand for flexibility and the flexibility all of us have had to use already is pretty evident at all levels in society. So not just our government, but governments throughout the world have had to flex their approach and their behaviour, and sometimes on a daily basis, in order to meet the demands of this crisis. Both the demands of managing the health issues, as well as the economic effects. And all of us, of course, have had to flex as well. So that might be that if you've got children at home, that you're homeschooling them. It may be that the way in which you do your job has had to change. And that, I suppose, applies for a lot of people. So already, just in the last few weeks, we've had a lot of practice at being flexible. In episode 2, I talked about the importance of knowing your outcome and taking responsibility for achieving your outcome. And not just now, but at any time, achieving our outcome often means that we have to make changes, that we have to flex our approach. Now, when I've been talking about modelling and recipes and looking at what other people do as a basis of NLP, there's another element to modelling, and that is self-modelling. We can certainly look at other people who are successful at doing things, and we can learn a lot from how they do it and their attitudes whilst they're doing it that make them successful. But it's also important to look at ourselves and look at the skills and the resources that we have that sometimes we don't fully recognize. I had a lady on a course with me some time ago, and she was talking about the difficulty that she had in her work situation, particularly in meetings, of speaking up and getting her point of view across. And that was one of the things that she wanted to focus on in the course. During a tea break, people were chatting socially, and she was talking about her daughter and her daughter's schooling and a difficulty that her daughter was experiencing at school. And she was talking about going in to speak to the school principal about that issue. Now, I was listening to what she said, and I was listening to how she reported that meeting and how she spoke to the principal of the school. And it occurred to me that in that situation, she had no difficulty speaking up or getting her point across. So I asked her, well, what's the difference? And she hadn't really thought about it before. She said, yeah, I did speak up in that situation. I did get my point across. So I said, what was different? And she said, well, when it came to my daughter's welfare and her education, I felt I had the right and the responsibility to speak up. And then she further reflected, well, I have the right and the responsibility to speak up in work as well. And I've just demonstrated to myself that actually I have the ability to do that. So she was doing a bit of self-modeling. That when she took the attitude in work as well as with her daughter's schooling, that she had the right and the responsibility to speak up, then she was more than capable of doing that. And maybe one of the, at least small benefits from this current situation is realizing our own ability to flex. And when this crisis is over, in whatever that looks like when it does, we will have more adjustments to make, and society will have more adjustments to make. So we'll have plenty use of that self-modeling, of that recognition of our ability to flex and make changes. And going forward, it might be worth thinking about, how can I use that ability that I've been demonstrating to flex and make changes and to change my habits and routines? Maybe there are ways in which we can flex that might improve our work relationships. Maybe there are ways in which we can flex that means that we approach problems in work or in our personal life in a different way. Or maybe there's ways in which we can work with our children or our wider family in a more effective way by flexing our behaviour. For now, though, just notice the ability that you've got to flex and think the potential that that gives you going forward. Thank you again for listening or watching, however you're consuming this podcast. As before, you can get more information on the services I provide and the courses that I run on my website, which is www.florencemadden.co.uk. And my books, The Intention Impact Conundrum and Everyday NLP, are available on Amazon. I look forward to you joining me in episode 5. Bye for now.